Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for a bookish update for you guys. First, I want to talk about something. I want to mention something that's book adjacent, and it's a book of an adaptation based on another adaptation of a book, and that's Wicked. I finally saw the movie version of the Broadway show. I am so happy and just absolutely loved it. And I do think, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's a money thing. You're going to make more money if you split up something into, two parts or three parts. Like, I know people had a problem with what they did with The Hobbits, making it a trilogy. And yes, I agree it wasn't necessary because it's a kid's book. So it's not super long. It's not like the original Lord of the Rings three parts, it's one small simple quest book, so it didn't need to be two parts. But I was cool with the trilogy. But yeah, so there was probably money involved in that one, but in this case I think it was smart to do that because a lot of the fans of the show would probably want them to include as much as they can, as much as possible, and I think they did with they included all of the first act and most of the first act. I mean, I don't know if there was anything they left out because it's been so long since I've seen the actual stage show, and that movie's very long. That musical is one of their longer musicals, and I want to say it's 3 hours. But I think there's no way they could have crammed it all into one movie. It just wouldn't be good, and it wouldn't feel rushed, and just. So I think I think this putting into two parts was like a smart idea, and the casting was great. Ariana Grande, I knew she would get the singing. I wasn't worried about the singing, but I didn't know about the acting because I did not grow up watching her. I mean, I had seen a little bit of her acting, but not enough to know for sure if I feel like she would do a good job with the part. But she did. She did amazing. And Cynthia Erivo, I wasn't familiar with her from before, but I think she did a really good job as well. And the same thing, and of course, I knew Jonathan Bailey. I was confident in Jonathan Bailey. I think he did amazing as Fiyero, and all the secondary actors the actors for the secondary parts were great too. A lot, and I know there was a lot of Broadway people in the movie. The costumes were beautiful, and the sets were spectacular, and everything was so great. And I don't have anything critical really, but I'm not really good at criticism. So you might want to also watch some other reviews. So definitely watch some reviews if you haven't watched it yet and are interested in what other people think of it, because I would just gush about it, because I don't have any, critiques. But yeah, I was happy I enjoyed it, and I can't wait until part 2 comes. And part of me secretly hopes that, like, my mom was talking to my sister about it, and they're coming for Christmas. And, I think my sister was asking about taking the kids to see it. And, I think she's saying that Harrison probably is my oldest nephew's probably the best person that would be old enough to, handle the movie and enjoy it and all that. I mean, maybe Daniel, but his younger brother, but I don't know. And she was saying, oh, well, you're here, maybe you can take him, you guys can go on a movie date. And I got him in. A part of me was kind of hoping that, was kind of thinking, oh, if they only would invite me to go, I would willingly see it again. But of course I'm not gonna drop any hints or anything. I'm just gonna, but I'll be hoping that maybe they'll ask me if I want to go. But it should really be about the two of them going and be like a little movie date, and I can hang out with the other two. But anyway, so yeah, but basically, yeah, I would love to see it again if I could see part 1 if I could. Which I wonder if they're gonna release part 1 or wait, but I don't know. Maybe they can't do that. Maybe they know that they can't really get away with waiting until part 2 comes out, and they would have to release part 1, and then you'd have to buy part 2 separately. Because I notice when they do stuff like that, they always, sometimes they'll eventually come out with a box set where you can buy both parts in one box. which is a bit annoying, but anyway, so yeah, that's my book adjacent news. Now, as far as book news, now let's get to the actual book update. So, I was originally going to talk about this earlier in last week, but I filmed this video, but then I ended up not getting to it, and it actually was perfect because I have a little bit more to talk about this time around. So sadly, I DNF 2 books, so I'm not off to the best start, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It did allow me to make a decision and to, decide to be able to make a decision about keeping these books or not. So I was able to put 2 books in the donation pile, because no sense in keeping them if I'm DNFing them. And one of them I have another copy that I received as a gift. But the 2 books are Man's Fate by French author Malraux. I don't know if I'm saying, my sister would probably know, or my dad. And, which is a book about a famous communist insurrection in China in the 1920s. And I think, according to what people said in Goodreads, explaining what it's about, the history and everything. I think it was an insurrection that failed. And I thought, I wanted to try them because I wanted to, maybe get a better idea about thinking maybe I could get some idea about communism. And actually, funnily enough, in America is in the Heart, Carlos Bulasan had read Malraux as one of the authors he consumed, and that put the idea in my, reminded me of that book's been sitting there, and I'd started that book earlier in the year, and I've been wanting to pick it up again because it's not a super long book, and it ends up being kind of boring and hard to, and there were times where I was a little confused, and I just was not getting into the story, and it felt more like a chore that I was just reading just to say, this is something to read. It's not long, and it's about communism, and it might be interesting, and it ends up not being all that interesting. It felt very tedious to read it, and I could say that I was reading it, and there was a part of me that was wondering, oh, maybe I need to sit and read it when there was, quiet and not as many distractions, and I just decided not to. So I put in the donation pile, and that is Man's Fate. If you guys are interested, it is about communism, and then here's the book that is probably going to get the most that I would be nervous about getting a reaction from people, because other reviewers that didn't love this book and read the whole thing but gave it a negative review, they got people pissed at them and mad at them for their review of it and saying why they didn't like the book, and maybe they were a little harsh on the book itself, but you gotta make your opinion clear, although apparently it wasn't clear enough, because people were still telling this person, oh, you have to read the book again, you have to read it like 4 or 5 times before you can get it. But anyway, so the book was Little Women. This was my second attempt at reading Little Women. I even bought the Pumpkin and Bloom edition of it, so it makes kind of sad because those editions are really pretty. And that's the one where I got another copy of it, a vintage edition that my sister got for me as a either Christmas or birthday gift. Actually, I think it was a Christmas gift for and she will shop at a thrift store where there's a huge, there's two rows of 2 aisles with the bookshelves in there that you for really cheap, and she got me that along with some collection of fairy tales, but I haven't cracked open yet since Christmas and last Christmas. And so if I wanted to give it a third attempt, then I could, but that probably won't happen. So it would be kind of nice, but it's kind of nice to have a vintage edition of it. But Anyway, so I tried it, and I got farther along this time. I got to part 2, and I read the first chapters of part 2, and the first 2 chapters. I just couldn't do it anymore. The story is it's very sweet and teaches good lessons for little girls, and like I still love Jo and I love Amy too as a character. Like I know people hate Amy because she is a brat. And she definitely crossed the line when she destroyed Jo's story, which Jo cannot easily fix that. So yes, I am pissed at Amy for doing that. But she was like 12 at the time and was angry, and I kind of understand her anger to an extent. I mean, how she reacted and what she decided to do to get back at Jo was, yes, that was messed up. So don't get mad at me. I hope no one gets mad at me for that, for defending Amy or anything, but and excusing her actions. I'm not trying to do that. Yes, she should not have done that. She should not have burned Jo's hard work. She cannot easily fix that because it's not like today where we have computers or we can recopy something so easily. Like that was handwritten with a quill and ink. And I did hear Amy does get better when she gets older and more likable. And yes, I'm Amy and Laurie, and maybe that's partly because of the 2019 version of adaptation, which really developed that relationship and made it more, I think it made it more believable that it happened. And like I was nervous about them make the book seeming like it actually came out of nowhere, because yeah, Jo and Laurie have so much in common. They connect on a greater level, and they're so much alike, and they have such affection for each other. But Jo didn't want to get married. At least back then. And then, of course, Louisa May Alcott was pressured to get Jo married, so she introduced the character of Professor Bhaer, which I hear in the book, he is not that great of a guy. And I liked him in the adaptations. So, yeah, I was apprehensive about that, but I didn't even get to that point in the book. I just decided, because I don't mind writing where it feels like very simple and feels like it's where it's directed. The target audience of the is our kids, like middle grade and younger, which is very simple and not too complex and not super flowery kind of writing. I mean, a little flowery, somewhat flowery, but not like to the point where you can't understand and you're like it's not written like poetry where it can be hard to understand. It's written in a way that a kid can get into it and see the beauty. But this story is so saccharine and such a lesson type book. Like at the end of every chapter, the girls are learning a lesson, and that's good for kids. Like it's a good book for kids, but it's just, or at least it might be, but it's just, I just got very frustrated and impatient and annoyed with the characters. Like I said, I still love Jo and Amy. Amy, like she feels like an authentic person, like has the personality, and most of us want to be Jo. And most of us connect with the Jo and her tomboy nature and her desire for writing, her passion and all that. Like, so while Beth and Meg, I hate to say it, but they're kind of boring. They're boring characters. I mean, like the actors in the movie adaptations I've seen, which were the 1994 and the 2019 version. And I think there was another one right before the 2019 movie came out, a 2018 version that I think was put on by the BBC. I've never seen it, but I did see a clip of the scene when it's revealed that Amy burned Jo's books. Not the clip where we actually see her doing the burning of the book, but when she at first is like, I don't have your book, and then she reveals that she burnt Jo's book to get her back for not letting her go to the theater with them and Laurie. That comparing that scene to the 2009, like it was a video comparing the two versions of the scene, the 2019 and then the other one, which I think was 2018. Which it was a very good video actually. It's very interesting, like comparing the screenwriting and how it was done, and the person, I think it was her channel name is E.K. Emmons. She's an author herself, and she was comparing the two and saying which one she prefers and thinks did a better job at executing it and everything. And it's a very good video if you want, that's kind of about the craft of writing. and adapting a book and all that, and it's very informative. But so that's the only way I only saw a clip from that version of the adaptation of an adaptation. Anyway, so like I think the adaptations I've seen do a better job at making Meg and Beth a little more appealing. They also make Marmee more appealing. Marmee is kind of annoying too, like very lecturing the girls on how to be good people. And yes, I know that it's based on her life, Louisa May Alcott's life, and her relationship with her with her mom and her sisters. Yes, I know that, and I know that she was a transdentalist, and I think that is basically someone whose their goal is to like perfect themselves, their being and everything, and something like that. And so I understand that, I do. But so there was one review on the book of this young man, and we were kind of surprised that a young man would want to read this book, because the audience for this book is typically female, like little girls. So it's kind of surprising that a young man would read this. And I think we should take the time to appreciate this young man wanted to read this book and see what all the fuss was about. And there were people that were like, they were telling him, they were surprised he read it, but they appreciate that he did. Maybe Louisa May Alcott is not the author for him, or maybe there's other books by Louisa May Alcott that are more for him, and all that. But of course, we had people that got pissy with him. People that love this book and think Little Women is the best thing ever and is a superior classic novel, classic literature and everything. And they were like, "Oh, you don't get the message. You need to read it like one more time, because like 4 or 5 more times to really get into appreciating, to fall in love with it." It's like, no, that was not going to happen. I mean, that his review was very vocal and very passionate, maybe a little harsh, but he stated his opinion very clearly that he did not like this book and he was very annoyed by the book. And people can tell you, well, you're wrong and you're missing the point and all that. And of course, there are people that had to acknowledge that, well, you need to know the history of Louisa May Alcott. And one person even said that this is an autobiography about her life. And not that I was going to, but part of me wanted to say, you do realize did you forget this was published as fiction? It's like, yes, it was based on her life. It was inspired by her life and her relationships with her sisters. So there was probably some autobiography inspiration involved, but it's not an autobiography technically. And classics are not above criticism. They're not above reproach, as I always say. You're like, yes, again, there are times when I love a certain book, whether it's a classic or not, where other people are very critical of it and talk about how terrible it is, or maybe even are mean about it, downright come off as mean, in my opinion. And yeah, I get a little frustrated, like, you're missing the, and as much as, like, on the one hand, I hate when people say, I think you're not understanding the message or understanding the point. I also think you can't tell a person that, because even if that is true, even to some extent that is true, that is not fair to them. And you can't just, and neither of you is right or wrong. And neither of you is an expert on said book, even though it's your favorite book. Loving how you feel about a book is subjective. People's opinions on a book are subjective. So yes, there are professional reviewers in the world, professional critics, who have more knowledge and probably a better idea of what a book is about, and looking for the important literary elements, such as like discussing if it's written well and the themes and all that good stuff. There are people who do that professionally, yes. And yeah, you could technically you could potentially persuade someone to feel differently about a book, but you cannot tell. But what I don't like is people say, well, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about, and because this is the best book ever. And I've seen this with this one, and I've also seen on a review for the Keeper of the Lost City series, which is another series that I DNF'd. It's 9 books long and it felt repetitive at times. It was cute and fun for a little while, but after a while it got like I was getting bored with the story. It was like, wanting them to get to like the main character's destiny and what she was meant to do and her role, and and it was exhausting. And I also, I mean, I was not a fan of the what looked to be the end couple. I wanted her with the main character with a different young man, and also I felt the characters were very immature and needed to grow up a little bit. Like, yes, the target audience is young adults, middle grade, but I feel like the author could have matured them a little bit and made them feel actually like they were getting older. But anyway. So yeah, I DNF'd. So that was when I DNF'd. And someone also was like not happy with the current book that they were in, a current book in the series. They were reviewing it and were not happy with it. And of course, you got people who are like, "You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. This is the best book ever, and how dare you?" And it's like, that's their opinion. You do realize that they're allowed to have a different opinion than you. Like, I mean, what? Are you an expert or something? What is this, your book or something? Like, what makes you the right person? What makes your opinion the right one? Like, it's a right to you, but not to that other person. Like, my opinions, how I feel about certain books and movies and shows, that's my opinion. And, I think I'm right, but, that's subjective. And yeah, it hurts when people don't love your favorite book and are really critical of your favorite movie, or, I don't always know how to respond sometimes when I think, when I'm telling a friend how much I love something, and then they're like, "Oh, I thought it was okay," or, "Oh, I didn't really like it actually." Like I love Frozen 2, and my friend Larissa was like, she didn't love it as much. And yeah, I did kind of pull the whole, "Oh, I think you should watch it again," but now I haven't pushed it on her since. I mean, I just hope that she gave it another shot, but she also said that she was concerned that maybe she should. But we're also friends. We've been friends for a while, so we know each other, and I've matured a lot and I've learned not to get so passionate about something, and be like, if someone's surprising is like, "Well, I didn't love it," I've learned not to get mad at them because that's just their opinion. And it's just, so it annoys me to see on Goodreads when you have people that are clearly like, "Well, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. This is the best thing ever." It's like, yes, in your mind, but not in theirs, and you cannot change their mind. But yeah, it just kind of annoyed and infuriated me. But anyway, so yeah, I was one of the people who also didn't love Little Women. Like, it's very preachy. And it's also like Laurie was so much more immature. Like yeah, Jo had her moments where I was kind of like she was a lot more vocal in the book about her being anti-marriage and not wanting Meg to get married. But I don't know, it just seemed more subtle in the movie, not as like, she wasn't giving John Brooke the stink eye like she was in the book. I mean, she would complain about him to Meg and their mom, but she wouldn't in the book she was kept glaring at him and like I said, giving him the stink eye and all that. I was like, "Okay, Jo, calm down. Like, again, how old are you?" I mean, but I don't know, maybe Louise May was trying to make it a little more dramatic, and since the target audience was kids, maybe she was just being over the top about it. But the same with Laurie, like, he was so much more annoying in the book than in the movie adaptations. And this kid is supposed to be college age. Now, maybe for college, I assume 18, but, I mean, I think it's 18 because I think he's older than Meg. And he still has this proclivity for pulling pranks. And, which I guess even as an adult, a young man can still enjoy a good prank. Like, I remember on Bridgerton, the dad, Edmund Bridgerton, liked, we were told that he liked pulling pranks, even as an adult. But, like, he went, like, at one point he goes a little too far with his prank. And then he promises, and once after, they talk to Laurie and explain to him and tell him it's cruel of him to do that and all that, he's like, I promise I won't say anything to my grandfather about this. This is between us. And he's determined to keep his word. And so, his grandfather, who thinks he's up to mischief again, as always, confronts him about it and asks him and doesn't believe when he says, I made a promise not to say anything. Which, okay, I get that him getting a little annoyed and upset because he promised that he wouldn't say anything, and his uncle keeps pushing him, or his grandfather keeps pushing him and doesn't trust him because he's known to lie. You can't trust the kid. But still, I can understand him being angry, but just his reaction was a little over the top to me. Like, he was like, I'm gonna run away because Grandpa thinks I'm a liar, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's just how I read it, but to me, it felt like he was having a temper tantrum about it. And it's one thing to get upset about, like, if your parents are keeping you away from the person you are in love with because they think you're too young or this person is a bad influence. But this was because of something like his grandpa not believing him when he said he promised not to say anything. And I'm just like, and Joe had to talk to his grandfather for him. They're like, you're college age, or you're going to be going into college, and you're having a temper tantrum like a 12-year-old. Or maybe even younger, like a 5-year-old. He was incredibly annoying and just very childish. But anyway, I mean, I got through a lot of the book. I mean, like I said, I made it to part 2 and read the first 2 chapters. But after a while, it got exhausting to read it. I was ready to move on and read something else. Fortunately, the something else I picked up next didn't work out either, and that was Man's Fate. So I have started reading Jefferson's biography, and I'm really liking that. It's very informative. I really like learning about Jefferson, him as a person, how he was a voracious reader, like Hamilton and like John Adams. And he didn't have a great relationship with his mom. He kind of resented his mom. He had a better relationship with his dad. Which the book talked about, the possibility that these other figures in history, like Jefferson and Franklin and some of the other presidents, didn't talk about their mothers that often. So it's an interesting theme to look at, in the relationship between moms for these gentlemen back then. Like, they admired their fathers and would talk about their fathers. So yeah, that wasn't so. I haven't picked it up lately, but I need to pick it up soon. And I decided today. So I decided because, and I guess it was because I had seen Wicked. I decided to return to this big volume of the first 5 novels. I've already read The Wizard of Oz. I know that story and everything. So I started reading a while back. I started reading The Marvelous Land of Oz, which is the second book in the series. So it follows the same formula as the first one, where you have a human child character goes on a quest, and they're, and brings along some companions. They're trying to get to the Emerald City. So you have Tip, who was raised by the witch Mombi, and he creates this Jack Pumpkinhead, and he has a sawhorse with him, and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man join him as well. And there's also a Wogglebug, which is a bigger version of a bug, and come alive and acts human, has a human so I guess it's kind of like a bug with a capital B, where it's very humanoid. And they're going to the Emerald City, and because the Scarecrow was made the king at the end of The Wizard of Oz, the book, and he lost it because these females of Oz decide to take over. A female general, Ginger, takes the throne from the Scarecrow, and is like, you shouldn't be ruling because you're not a good ruler. You're just a Scarecrow with some brains. And so they decide to take over and cast him out. So he has to go and find his old buddy, the Tin Man. And he, along with Tip, the human boy, and Jack Pumpkinhead, and the Sawhorse, and the Wogglebug, they go on the quest to get to the Emerald City. They receive help from field mice, and the Tin Man is an emperor of the Winkies, and it's just fun. It's a fun, fun little children's story. It's much more fun than Little Women, in my opinion, at least for me personally, because it's an adventure and there's all these crazy stuff that happens to them. And although I wasn't a big fan of the whole like Mombi, the witch Mombi creates illusions as a distraction. But once they realize that the illusions are not real, that they were just that illusions, it kind of and ends up they get through them easily. So I'm still disappointed by that. I wish that they had made it more complicated than that. But I mean, this is a kid's story, so Frank Abaum, I guess, didn't want to do that. And it just seemed like there was one of the detours, one of the things that blocked their path was something that most of them were scared of, were worried it would harm them. So I guess that created a little bit of tension. Like I said, this is a kid's book, so I'm probably being a little too critical. So I was at the bookstore. I also started reading The American Center. I began to read the first chapter of this book. And I don't have a lot to say right now because we're just introduced to the town of, what's the name of the town? Of Dillsborough. And meaning it's being described to us, the setting, and we're told about the families and their histories and stuff. From what I know, it's this American Center who comes to the small English town and is observing their lives of the people in this village, and comes across this one woman who is caught between two different men. She is engaged to a diplomat, but she decides to stalk, and that's what it says on the back of the book, stalk this Lord Rutherford. So that's all I know so far, and I mean, I don't know if the two of them are gonna fall in love or not, but which would be very entertaining because it'll be funny that she's engaged to this one guy, and then after another guy, but then realizing that her true soulmate is this American dude. That should be really entertaining if that's the case, the plot of the story. I mean, there is romance. But yeah, I decided to go ahead and pick this up because I want to read another trollop before the end of the year, or at least start another trollop. Which basically goes back to my whole wanting to make sure I read a trollop and a Wilkie Collins for read another one of their books before the end of the year. I mean, I didn't think it would, I don't know if it's gonna happen I'm gonna finish this before the end of the month, but I'm gonna try, because that way I can at least say I've read another trollop book. And then I have a few others over there as well, so, and then I still gotta finish the Barchester series. So I did take out, the Moonstone to start reading in December, but I don't know if that will happen or not. Like I said, I'm kind of feeling, Christmas is coming up, and I'm feeling anxious, and, especially since I do have 2 books. So now let's talk about what I recently purchased. So I've gone twice this week to the bookstore, because, like I said, I'm, And actually, oh, crap. I will be right back. I forgot one other book. Okay. Oh, damn it. I forgot. I haven't showed you this book yet. Okay, so since I have it here, let me. Okay, so earlier this month, my mom, I went to, since I was done Christmas shopping and everything, I asked my mom to drop me off at Books A Million, and I decided to get this. So I was trying to stick to nothing that was on my list, which is kind of hard at times, but so this is Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. It's a translated work. And of course, it's one of those ones where it doesn't really give a description on the back. I mean, it sort of does, like, two modern day Quixotes, the last survivors of underground literary movement, perhaps of literature itself, on a tragic comic quest through a dark and tropic universe. So that's really all it gives, but I did look it up on Goodreads, and it sounded intriguing. And apparently it's not necessarily told from these two main guys, but the people who meet them. But yeah, it sounded really intriguing, and I would like to read more translated works. But I mean, I don't seek them out, all the time. So, I decided to seek this one out, and like I said, it sounded interesting. The only, I am a little apprehensive though, because this is a very, like, the two main characters are two young men, and this is, so as a female reader, I gotta admit there are some, although this is translated by a woman, so that might help. But I mean, that's there's always that fear that, as a female reader, you won't connect to a book that's male oriented, and that you might find things that, and that might not make you comfortable as a female reader. But I'm gonna try it, and it, like I said, it sounded intriguing. Okay, so now let's talk about the books. Okay, so first we have, let's see, first we have one that I had looked at before, and I debated about buying it, and I decided to buy it here. This copy? Finally decided to buy it. This is Beautiful Little Fools, by Gillian Cantor. And yes, this is a spinoff to The Great Gatsby. And now The Great Gatsby, people have free reign. They can reinterpret it. They can do their own, like, retellings of it. And there have been quite a few now. And so this one is kind of the aftermath of the events of the book. And why, like, in trying to determine who killed Jay Gatsby. And you have three characters, or I think, let me just double check. Yeah, it's about who killed him. So you have Daisy, of course, could potentially be the one who killed him. You have Jordan Baker. And then there is a character, a new character introduced. I don't know if she's mentioned in the, I'm assuming she's mentioned, I don't know if she's mentioned in the book or not. But Catherine McCoy, she is the sister of Myrtle. And they kind of add some things in here, like the, you know, that Daisy was, that some tragedy happened in her family that sent her to, that forced her to feel like she needs to marry Tom Buchanan. It's been a while since I read the book. Now I got rid of my original copy, but I do have that book that is some of his novels, some of Fitzgerald's novels, so I could reread it just to refresh my memory of what, you know, to see if this stuff is, if there's any evidence of this stuff making sense, fitting this, you know, fitting the story. And then we also have, like, Jordan Baker, there's a secret that derailed her golf career that could ruin her friendship with Daisy. And then you have Myrtle's sister, who is a suffragette. So I wonder if there's going to be, like, flashbacks, too, in this story of, like, referring to events in the book a little bit. Like, and, of course, new stuff that wasn't in the original novel, obviously, that kind of refers to the characters and what's going on with them. And, but yeah, I do love reading about the 20s. So, I mean, that's why I love, you know, The Great Gatsby, because it's in the 20s and everything. So, I finally decided to buy it the other day, and, because even at Books A Million, yes, it was on the clearance. First of all, I haven't seen the book since I first saw it, so someone probably already bought it, and second of all, it was probably a little bit cheaper at Given's Bookshop, rather than at Books A Million, so I got that. Which, by the way, I did not get these today. These were from the other day, because I did go today. Okay, so next is the, I don't know how to say this. Decameron, I'll need to see how to say it, but, oh, this is blurb from Elena Ferrante, which I was looking for her book, her famous, if it's a woman, because we still don't know who the author is. If Elena Ferrante. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, Elena Ferrante. We don't know who she is. If it's a she, or if that's a pseudonym, or what. People don't know. But I was looking for her book today. That was one, when I go there, sometimes I like, there are books on my radar that I will look for, just to see if they still have it there. But this is the medieval times set in Florence, and these people, the description gives me the impression that it's kind of like the Canterbury Tales, where a group of people are traveling and they tell stories. They're telling stories. It feels very much in the vein of that. This time though, it's not in England, but it's in Florence. But yeah, it sounded really fun. And like I said, I'm giving the Canterbury Tales another shot, because the only reason I was all mad at the Canterbury Tales and stuff and having to read that book is because I wanted to read Hamlet, and we did not. We did read it, but we rushed through it because it was towards the end of the semester, so we didn't really get to discuss it. So I was not happy about that. And then to this day, I'm still embarrassed that we got surprised with a pop quiz for one of the stories, and it's a story that I opted not to read because I was being rebellious and being a brat, and it was like, I'm not gonna read this. And that was a mistake, because we had a pop quiz on it, and I failed. So, Yeah, and it's funny that, and I think it was the one that a lot of people love. You know, was one of the popular ones in that collection. But anyway, so, and this was one of these things where I don't, I feel like you need to grab these books when you can, and especially when it comes to going to a bookstore. I almost got Hamlet that time, and then but it's also on my wish list. So I was like, let me see if I get it from someone, and if not, then I think it's on my wish list. I think. I mean, I'm not mad at myself if it's not. In terms that I don't, but anyway, it is. I think it's on there, but I think it was on there, so I might get it. I mean, I could be thinking about like my thrift books wish list. I don't know, and no one can see that list except for me. But I opted not to get it Hamlet because it was there. But it's one of these things where if I didn't, it's probably not going to be there after Christmas. But yeah, so with this kind of stuff, you gotta grab it when you can. I feel like that's the risk with used bookstores, used bookshop. There's no guarantee it's still gonna be there because someone else might pick it up, and it's not like they have multiple copies like Books A Million or Barnes and Noble does. They might get another copy of it one day, but there's no guarantee. I kept looking for Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and I even put in, gave them they allow me to write it down for them so that if it ever comes in, and they could call me, and it did, but I already bought the book at the time because I was thinking it's not going to happen, it's never going to show up. And of course it did show up. But anyway, so I'm excited to I'm curious to read this. And along with rereading the Canterbury Tales, and then there's also the collection of stories of Persian stories as well, the Arabian Nights, all 3 volumes. So I'm excited to read that as well. But I haven't got to it yet. I need to consider reading that this year. And then this is my most exciting find that day. Not the specific story, but the fact that this is a Persephone edition. And I'm so excited because I constantly hear about the Persephone editions. And of course the Persephone bookstore is in England. It's not it's not an American store. And it's not a chain bookstore. So you're not going to get these unless you order them online or you go to England yourself. And specifically go for that. But I was so excited to see that someone left this behind. I did look up the story, and it does sound really interesting. But I don't know what, because it's not like this cover is glamorous. It's plain. It's very plain, but it's recognizable because you know it as soon as you see this solid gray cover with this thing, like with the title and everything, the title card, then you know this is a Persephone edition. And then top of that, you can take the dust jacket off. It's still the same, but what's nice is that I noticed this, like a pretty picture. Let me see if there's one on the. I didn't look and see if there was. Yep, it continues on the other side as well. So that's nice. But I looked it up, and it sounded like kind of a fun, very normal, like a little like. Which this makes me, because at first I was gonna say, oh, domestic stories don't interest me, but actually, that's not entirely true. But I was gonna say domestic stories don't interest me as far as because that's one of the reasons I didn't love Little Women. But actually, like I said, that's not entirely true. I think it depends on how it's told, and this one was very much told. Little Women is told in a way that's teaching you things and deliberately teaching. These girls are learning lessons about life and trying to be better people and all that, which is nice and all for little kids, but little girls that haven't become cynical and accepted the reality of adulthood. But yeah, I am so excited to have a Persephone. It's like, I just get so excited to get these special editions of a book and finding them at my bookstores here in the U.S. because some of them are UK only bookstores. Like, you're not going to find Persephone books here in the US. So I was really excited to see this. But yeah, and then there's also this is the little Persephone icon. But yeah, it's, despite the fact that it's just a gray cover, it's still very, pretty and exciting to have it. So those are the books I got the other day. Now today, surprised I only got 2 books today. I almost got 3, but I decided to get 2, just to stick to 2. And like my original was hoping to find a certain edition of the classic for my nephews and niece, because my sister has a collection of the Great Illustrated Classics books, and she wants to collect them for my nephews and niece. And I saw Christmas Carol the other day, but they did have like the Festival of Lights or whatever, and there was a lot of people, and the bookstore was open, so someone probably bought it eventually. And I'm not surprised. So, but it was just a nice little, okay, so here's, once again, there was a bookmark, Christmas inspired. I don't know why I keep getting them, but they're pretty, and I want to give the person who created these, I don't know who created them, but I want to give them a, so, and like, the woman said they were inspired by Christmas, so, even though they're not the best as far as like their paper, and what, they could easily get ruined. But so first, as soon as I see this author, I'm gonna buy it, and that is Elizabeth Kostova. And this is The Shadowland. So I love this author, so it's like I'm just gonna, Okay, so let me read the back description, because I don't remember. I did read it when I was in the bookstore today. Alexandra Boyd, a young American woman, travels to the elegant Eastern European city of Sofia, Bulgaria, hoping that life abroad will soften a recent loss. Shortly after arriving, she helps an elderly couple into a taxi, then realizes too late that she has accidentally kept one of their bags. Inside, she finds an ornately carved wooden box engraved with the name Sonia Lazaroff. Raising the lid, she discovers that she is holding an urn filled with human ashes. As Alexandra sets out to locate the family and return this precious item, she begins to uncover the decades-old secrets of a talented musician whose life was shattered by oppression, and discovers that this knowledge is fraught with present-day danger. So, because I also have her book, The Swan Thieves, I have that one as well. Okay, so this was the third one, her third book. She wrote The Historian, The Swan Thieves, and then The Shadowland, and I don't know if she's written anything else. I have to look her up. But yeah, so far I have 3 of her books now, and I haven't started The Swan Thieves, but I do want to start it. Of course, now it's gonna probably be added to my pile of books that I want to start reading. But yeah, I'm excited. I love stories where there's like an average person learns about a past and does finds out about and has to piece it all together, and you look at the past and the present and compare what's going on in the present to what happened back then. That's why I love Kate Morton, which I would love to do a video on Kate Morton. Like, I keep saying that I'll do it, but I never do it because I'm like, there's always an excuse in me, like, I need to reread all of her books. And now she has a new book that just came out that I finally bought it. So I need to reread that one as well, but I feel like that's what I need to start reading now, so that I can finally do a video about Kate Morton, because I love her books, and I feel like she doesn't get enough attention. And maybe I'll do a thing on her, Elizabeth Kostova. Okay, so the last book, this is an author I attempted to read once before, and I did like him. It's just, at the time, it was long. And this current book is super long, too. He writes a lot of long books. And it was a book about France, particularly Paris. And he's written a book about London, and he's also written a book about China. And I even pointed out to my friend Terry, who likes China and Chinese history, and asked her if she would be interested, and she kind of shrugged it off. I think it would be too long, for her it would definitely be too long. Like a little too much. And plus, I think it's specific dynasties in China and time periods in Chinese history that she likes. Which, yeah, I mean, a lot of us have our preferences when it comes to history, for those of us who love history. So I saw this one, and I decided to go ahead and pick it up. It's, Sarum? I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's a family saga, just like the one I attempted to read, Paris, was kind of a saga story. And it's England. It takes, but I think older England, because it's like he wrote London, which is probably more about a little bit more modern England, not necessarily today's England, but I think modern day, like 20th century England. So in Sarum, Edward Rutherford creates a masterpiece of breathtaking scope that traces the entire turbulent course of English history. This rich narrative weaves a compelling saga of 5 families: the Wilsons, the Masons, the family of Porteous, the Shockleys, and the Godfreys. As their fates and fortunes intertwine over the course of centuries, their greater destinies offer a fascinating glimpse into the future. So a blurb that compares it to Mishner. I don't know who that is. And then there's another blurb that says, enormous, richly woven tapestry, supremely well crafted and a delight to read. That's from Chicago Tribune. And then Kansas City Star says, if you enjoy the novels of... that's the one who, compares this to James Michener. He says, if you enjoy the novels of James Michener, you're certain to love reading this epic. And San Francisco Chronicle just calls it wonderful. So I want to try, Edward Rutherford again. Like I said, I was just not ready for that book, Paris, because it was a long book, but I did like the writing. That's one of the things I struggle with, is the super long, dense books. I have a hard time committing to them because they're so long and dense, and I mean, this is why one of my motivations for I want to change my reading and not be so focused on the amount of books I read, but more focused on the quality of my books. But not that I read books that I don't want to read just to get books read, but I mean, I do feel like sometimes I rush things a little bit and ignore the bigger books because I'm oh, this is going to take me way too long to read. But I actually watched 2 videos that discussed how we are kind of a counting culture now, where we're worrying more about the number rather than the quality. Tristan in the Classics has a video discussing it, and another booktuber that she's new to me. I just saw her video and how she feels like booktube has kind of ruined things for her a little bit, because of the pressure, because it allows her to put pressure on herself to have certain expectations, because booktube has made her aware of trying to keep up with everybody else and so many books, and it's not entirely booktube's fault. I mean, I think we have more self-control than we realize, than we give ourselves credit for. But social media is designed to be addicted to it, so you're it gives you more of a reason to stay there and keep going. And that's why I don't like short form content, because I want to spend some time with you guys and talk to you guys and express myself. Plus, I want to be very good at doing short form. I'd be very bad at it. I mean, you guys know how much I ramble on these videos, and then I do a lot of pauses, and because I lose my train of thought. So anyway, But that's something I definitely want to work on this year. But anyway, so that is kind of my update for you guys. I'm gonna do some reading today. Probably read a little bit more of The American Senator. Try to, read The Marvelous Land of Oz and finish that one. And I feel like I should read a little bit of that one now, because every time I've been reading it before I go to bed, before I go to sleep, and then I end up falling asleep and having to put it down. So I feel like I need to read at least a couple chapters today before, go to bed. And then start reading, and also read a little bit of The American Senator as well. So what are you guys currently reading? I would love to know what has, held your attention right now. Do you guys struggle with, do you guys struggle with all, like, trying to, like, keep up with everybody else on BookTube? Do you, feel like you have so many options that you can't specifically stay on one tab, sit with a book? Or do you, put aside longer books, even if you want to read them, because you have all these other, you have all these other books to read. And I'd be curious if any of you feel that way. I mean, I know I'm not alone, because that's why people make all these videos discussing this now. And, and with TikTok, of course, it makes it even more prominent a situation, because there are booktubers that are complaining that there's too many words in books, and they don't want to read super long ones. But anyway, if you can relate to any of those things, and if any of the things that people say in these videos, does it apply to you or not? Maybe it doesn't apply to you. I don't know. But anyway, so feel free to comment, and I hope you're enjoying your reading. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe. If you haven't already, click the bell icon if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!